Buenos días a todas, todos y todes. Alice Poma y yo les damos la bienvenida a la segunda conferencia internacional organizada en el marco del Seminario Permanente Interinstitucional en Emociones, Activismo y Cambio Social, que hoy, en la sesión de hoy, cuenta con una invitada muy especial, la socióloga Arlie Hochschild. Agradecemos el Centro de Investigaciones Interdisciplinarias en Ciencias y Humanidades y el Instituto de Investigaciones Sociales de la UNAM por el apoyo institucional y logístico. Además, claramente, de agradecer por la traducción simultánea que está a cargo de Paula Salinas. Quien quiera conocer las actividades que llevamos a cabo puede seguir también en la página web y Facebook el Laboratorio sobre el activismo alternativa de base, LACAB, lacab.org.mx. Y con esta muy breve introducción, para no quitar tiempo a Ernie, paso la palabra a Alice, que presenta a nuestra invitada.
Gracias, Tommaso. Para nosotros es un verdadero honor presentar hoy aquí a Arlie Hochschild, que agradecemos una vez más por su disponibilidad. La doctora Hochschild no necesita de presentaciones, siendo un pilar en la sociología de las emociones. Solo quiero recordar que este año 2023, su libro The Managed Heart cumple 40 años. Y hace 7 años fue publicado su último libro, Strangers in Their Own Land, traducido al español y publicado en 2020 por Capitán Swing, con el título Extraños en su propia tierra, Requiem por la derecha estadounidense. En el marco del Seminario Permanente sobre Emociones, Activismo y Cambio Social, queremos destacar que el trabajo sociológico de Hochschild, que ha sido aplicado para comprender diferentes facetas del mundo social, desde lo laboral al cuidado dentro y fuera del hogar, es central también para comprender el activismo y los movimientos sociales. En particular, nos pareció interesante que nos hablara de las reglas del sentir que caracterizan el sistema capitalista, porque desde sus primeros escritos, nuestra invitada destacó que este no solo es un sistema económico, sino también cultural. Creemos que para poder construir alternativas a la crisis climática y ambiental, así como superar la desigualdad estructural, necesitamos comprender cómo los seres humanos hemos interiorizado la cultura capitalista y las emociones que la caracterizan. Y para eso no podíamos tener una invitada mejor que Arlie Hochschild. Una vez más, gracias por estar aquí con nosotros y te paso la palabra.
Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be in your company and talking about something as important as the topic you raise. I think I'll begin with something you said. Both Tommaso, Gravante, and Alice Pomo in a recent essay, which I've just read, that says each of us can think about what we feel and feel about what we think. And let's take a minute to take that in as a profound orientation to sociology and to social activism. So today, I'd like to begin with some general remarks about capitalism and about feeling rules, and then move into a specific example of those two works taken from my recent book, Strangers in Their Own Land, Anger and Mourning on the American Right. And I'm going to try and show how feeling rules in action form an acceptance of extreme pollution from my book, taking 3 characters and showing how this happens. And then I'd like to end with thoughts that would be helpful to activists trying to challenge the feeling rules and practices of raw capitalism. So first, capitalism, what is it? There are many forms of it. There's American capitalism, there's Scandinavian capitalism, there's big capitalism, that's Amazon, and little capitalism, mom and pop stories. At the moment, big capitalism is eating up little capitalism. There are many cultural formations for each type of capitalism. But the main story in the United States today, I believe, is runaway capitalism, drawing on the work of William Grader, One World Ready or Not. He talks about how companies seek cheap labor. Clothing companies in New England said, we have to get away from the labor unions, let's go south. So they moved from little towns in Massachusetts and Maine and New Hampshire down to Louisiana and Mississippi, where there were no labor unions. But then wages were too high there. So they said, let's run away to Mexico. And there we will be able to find cheaper labor. But then Mexico wanted good wages too. So then let's go to China. And if China asks too much, let's go to Vietnam, Cambodia. So William Grader argues that there is a kind of search for cheap labor and inherent in capitalism. And one other general thing to say is that I would say this is runaway capitalism. It has tried to push off any boundaries on it. And this I get from the works of Robert Kuttner. It's Everything for Sale. And he points out in the 1970s, when American companies were offshoring, they got rid of the constraints of labor unions, and they got rid of the constraints of government. They were free, unrestrained, so that all of the feeling rules that were operating got stronger, and they were, quote, freer. So this isn't sweet Scandinavian, highly regulated companies of Norway. It's not Chinese industry that's, in a way, capitalism owned by the state. It's American capitalism, runaway capitalism. Now, so what are the feeling rules? That's just a premise before we look more specifically at things. I think the basic feeling rules of capitalism are, they deal with what you feel proud of or ashamed of. So you should feel proud and good about yourself if you are self-interested. That's honorable. That's a source of pride. So it should be good to have money and to own. And that ownership, that makes you feel powerful. It's good to feel powerful, good to feel you own. And it's good, more is good. So it's pro-growth. If you own one plastic bottle, it's good to own 3. Better to own 3. If a company produces 300 tons of plastic bottles, that it's better to produce 9,000 plastic bottles. That more is inherently better. That's the feeling rule. Now, another capitalist feeling rule is now is good. Don't think about tomorrow. Think now. Have fun. Have it. Enjoy this, the fruits of your labor now. So more now. And implicitly, don't be afraid. This is fine. This is safe. This will last. This system called capitalism. If you think of the earth as mother, think of mother as fine. She's not sick. She's not tired. You haven't hurt her. So these are the basic premises. They are unspoken. People don't think of there being any feeling rules. So there's no conversation about these ways that sit on your heart of how it's good to feel. And that's the system we've got. So if you're an activist, your challenge that you are engaged in already is to question those very premises and to show how they influence some of the courses of action that companies are taking that are harmful, if not ruinous, to the people, to many people. So those are the connections between capitalism, as I understand it, and tacit, unspoken, even unconscious feeling rules that support capitalism. It's a capitalist culture, and we have a capitalist self that buttress the economic system of capitalism. Now I would like to take you to a certain place in America where capitalism in the form of the petrochemical industry has taken root, and where all of those feeling rules are daily reinforced. And where great harm is being done. Let me say a few words. So what are we talking about? We're talking about Shell Oil Company or Axiol or Sasol, they're all based outside of Sasol. This comes from South Africa, Shell Oil from Britain, Pittsburgh Plate and Glass is from the north. These are all companies that come here because the oil is there and the waterways for transporting oil are there. In Calcasieu Parish, which is a little parish in the south on the water Bay of Mexico, in the state of Louisiana. These petrochemical companies, just to say more about them, have landed, they are enormously profitable. Billions of dollars are earned, but those dollars are taken out of the state, and the state of Louisiana is the second poorest state in the country, next to Mississippi. And $84 billion has recently been invested in further development. So more is good. Everyone is thinking good. More money is going into this. And what they are receiving is oil based on fracking. And fracking is when you crack open with machines the rock, and the oil comes out more quickly. It's machines replacing man's labor. So it's not giving jobs to anyone, fracking. It's just a more efficient way of extracting oil. By the way, it's interesting to think of the names the company gives to things. In another state, there is the extraction of coal. They've got big machines to saw off the top of mountains to extract the coal. And what they call the top of the mountain that they've lifted off is the overburden. So the natural streams and the nutritious earth is renamed. So if you're following the company's feeling rule, you have to think of that natural stream and that natural growth as unuseful because it's getting in the way of money and profit. And this is one of the most polluted, contaminated areas in the United States. It has a life expectancy rate of 5 years less than Connecticut, for example. Very high cancer rate. In the early years, the state bird became extinct. The Louisiana pelican, they had to go to Florida to get it going again. And many animals have died. Okay, there's something else to note about the petrochemical dominance in the state of Louisiana. It's taking stuff out, it's bringing pollution in. But in order to get people to agree to that, what it has done is to basically control the entire state. When I began my research, I didn't know this. I should have, but basically it controls the regulation of itself. There is something called the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality. It doesn't even have the word protection. And you cannot read a word of it. It's written in completely obscuring language. It wouldn't pass an English test, at the first grade. It is meant to obscure the truth. And it pretends not to find any pollution or very much. It's all tolerable pollution. The company also has in the past tried to disguise the harm it does. I interviewed a man whose job it was to go out early in the morning in a boat and collect the dead fish from a bayou. People have reported to me that danger signs, watch out, don't swim, are lifted out. We don't know who took them out. So the feeling rule is you're safe, everything's fine, don't worry. And the companies collectively through advertising control the newspapers, so the newspapers aren't reporting, hey, more patients have come down with cancer at a certain bayou. It's not even the newspaper. So there's information control is a strategy of control that the company uses. Meanwhile, the company as a practice also encourages people to adapt. Very often in neighborhoods around a cluster of petrochemical plants, a siren will go off, and it will mean that there's an emission, an explosion of some sort. And people will see black clouds. And then the radio will say, shelter in place. Children are to go inside off the playground. And then 5 minutes later, okay, safe. And then it will say it could be ethylene dichloride or some chemical, is contained within the company premises. Recently, I saw that. Well, what does that mean? There are clouds. There's wind. You can't contain the wind. There isn't company wind. The wind takes the ethylene dichloride 5 miles to the north within half an hour. So it's fictive, these reassurances, but they create an idea of safety. So when the siren goes off, one woman told me, well, I call my brother who's working at a chemical factory, and what chemical was it that was released? And he would say, this one's dangerous, that one isn't. People have their own private alternate systems of symbols of safety. They know enough that the company is going to always say it's safe, and they know enough to disbelieve it, but they've got private ways of reassuring themselves. Meanwhile, this is the sad part. The company, the whole state, this poor state, is paying billions of dollars to get companies to come and invest right in Lake Charles. Oh, don't go to Houston, Texas. No, come here in Lake Charles. We'll give you $1 billion more. But these billions of dollars don't bring jobs, and they don't bring safety. So the company is describing itself to the outside world as not extractive. Right? It's bringing something. It's good. It's helping you. It's making Louisiana richer, but it's not. And it never promises to make Louisiana safer. That's not to be discussed. But these are the feeling rules. And at the same time, it tries to, while it's taking $1 billion, it also gives public gifts. Oh, the generous company is now paying for the football uniforms of the Louisiana State football team. You know, Sasol is behind the football team. And so what a generous state is Sasol to both give us the jobs it says it's giving us and paying for these uniforms. So it, in its public relations, it finds a way of making it seem like it's bringing good news. It's good news for now. It's good news. Don't think about the future. It's bringing more. All of those feeling rules we talked about. More now. It's good. Don't be frightened. Apply in this specific case of these companies, petrochemical companies in this poor state. Now, how does it work? How do people live there and not complain? How is that people vote for representatives in a democracy who represent the company but do not represent their health or the good education of their children, because it's such a poor country. It doesn't offer good health care and good education. It's at the very bottom of all these UN indices of well-being. How do you get a regular citizen who's living a mile and a half away from these, or, right next to one of these companies? And in all three cases that I'll talk about, nobody is working for the company. So we're not talking about someone who says, oh, my husband's job, our source of family income is the company, and so we think the company is great. No. In these three instances, somebody is just a resident. And I think I'd like to give you three examples. If you've read The Strangers in Their Own Land, you've met them before. And one I call the worshiper, one I call the cowboy, and one I call the loyalist, team loyalist. And what, as sociologists, we get to do is to try and really understand where a person's feelings of loyalty to a company that's not being loyal back, where they come from, and to imagine that you're talking to someone who's very intelligent, who's not ignorant of the facts entirely, someone who's capable of high reasoning. So you're not talking down to anybody. You're talking across to people who are parents, who are very loving to those in their church. And yet they think Sasol and BP, there was a small spill in the Gulf, British Petroleum, dumped millions of gallons of oil and in a nearby bay. Very famously, oil gushing into the water day after day after day for months. They know this, but something's stopping them from saying, this isn't good. I'm not for it. We need to do something. Okay, so the first character is a woman named Jackie, and she comes from a large city, from a very poor, large Irish family, and she struggled a great deal, left home at 15, and didn't get along with her stepfather, and a life of struggle. She's highly religious. She was brought up Catholic. And this turns out to be a kind of a cultural resource that, informing her own feeling rules and her own emotion management, she is drawing on. She believes that that you can't always have what you want. And it's virtuous to develop the capacity to sacrifice yourself, to not get what you want, but to still be a good person. That makes you good, in fact, to give up, to be able to give up, not get angry, not sulk, but to willingly give up something good. She says, I'm really an environmentalist. I love the birds. I love my children to feel safe swimming. I love nature, but we can't have it. That actually giving up and sacrificing is what you want, which is health in the environment and health for your children. Giving up that is the price we pay for capitalism. And then she says, look at my Arctic cat, which is a machine in there. It's a vehicle in their driveway. I don't want to give up my Arctic cat. Okay, which is a nice house. She was once very poor. She doesn't want to give that up. And this is the price. She associates capitalism with the Arctic cat, that with her family's well-being, and she will sacrifice knowing that if her children go in to swim in a body of water surrounding Lake Charles, they will have some chemical on their skin. And I heard people say, well, you come out with a rash from that water. So she renounces her criticism of pollution, and what she says about herself is, I'm a capitalist. I'm loyal to capitalism. And the other strings of feeling rules, more the better, now is important, don't think of the future, and so on. All of those she adopts. And she draws on her belief in the church, her sense of goodness about herself in the church. She goes to a Baptist evangelical church, and she does the emotional labor of suppressing ingratitude and suppressing fear. So she's not allowed to feel, look what you're doing to me. Look at the danger we're all in. And is this getting worse? I say I love my children, but am I acting in their best interest? Those she is suppressing. Those are feeling rules not to feel that. So feeling rules are what you should feel, but also what you should not feel, what you can't feel. Territory you don't want to go to. And the company is not reminding you of that, except when it does a huge oil spill. So that's one way in which a person can come to bring themselves to adopt the feeling rule, don't worry, it's okay. And I will come in the end to how we talk to a person like that, if you're an activist. But the second kind of person that I encountered is what I called the cowboy. And I met a guy named Donnie, and what he kind of felt, if I were to put it in succinct ways, is I'm tough. You're tough. Mother Nature is tough. We're all tough. We get over things. You get hit in the face, you get up. You're a tough person. That's the nature. We were made that way. And we take some knocks. And that's natural too. But it doesn't kill us. We get back on our feet. We're tough. We're soldierly. And no harm is really done. He doesn't believe in harm. And his pride is based on confronting harm. Oh, you thought you could hit me. You thought you could harm. Well, I came back. I was strong. So that's a particular, we're in each feeling rule, what we're doing in each of the emotional work it takes to suppress understanding of the real situation you are in. living where you do, it takes locating pride where you and I might think pride doesn't belong. You're proud of withstanding contamination? No. Is that a good idea? Is that an idea for now, or 5 years from now when you're in the cancer ward in Houston, Texas? It makes you think of all of those Marlboro cigarette ads of men being really cool and cowboyish. And the anti-cigarette people got these actors that now honestly had cancer talking about how they put on the ads, but wow, was that a bad idea? They had cancer. Cancer isn't fun. Cancer, is there a tomorrow with cancer? Cancer is now, but cancer isn't safe. So those ads are really something to study, how you actually appeal to people's other notions of goodness in order to help them critique a false notion of goodness. So Donnie, our cowboy, really said fish. Oh, he didn't worry about eating contaminated fish. Go ahead and eat the fish. And by the way, in a government pamphlet that tells you what's safe and isn't safe, you are instructed how to eat contaminated fish. Well, you take off the fatty part of the fish. How do you know that the rest of the fish is, if the fatty part is got pollution, is infecting it? Would you trust the other part of it? Unbelievable to me, to us. But anyway, he eats anything that comes out of the water, and he swims in it. And these are tests of strength, as he imagines them, not foolhardy. It's being too girly and weak and too fear-oriented in his mind. That's girly, that's weak. To worry, to be a worry wart. Oh, am I safe? He puts in a category of his mind that he devalues. So when you're talking to him, we'll come to that. How do you talk to a guy that does that? That's the challenge. You don't avoid it. You address it. So there is no talk of the future and future harm to nature. And anyway, he isn't a particular nature lover. And his emotional labor, his worldview legitimates the suppression of fear. Okay. Now the third way, so each person is drawing on a prior notions of pride that are embedded in either gender ideology or church ideology. Is lifting out a notion of pride. And for our third character, Janice, the team loyalist, she's really focusing on the company itself. She feels that the company has saved her family, not her personally, but her family, father, from poverty, rural poverty, and that it deserves loyalty back. So in this case, she isn't suppressing what she really wants. It's not renunciation. It isn't bravado, although it has an element of bravado. But she's loyal to the company as she is loyal to the church. Actually, it's quite similar. And she defends the company against critics. Critics, she sees, are negative people. They don't believe in work. They're trying to stop a good thing. All they do is stop things. They don't go forward with anything. They don't do what companies do, which is make you richer, make you financially safer. All the good things companies do, these activists have forgotten. They're taking it for granted. They must be rich themselves and not worried the way we workers are, and being thankful for what the company gives us. So her emotional labor is to suppress any desire to betray loyalty to a company. It's a different, slightly different task of emotional labor. But all three are examples of compliance with company feeling rules and are largely unconscious, I would say, but can be brought to consciousness. And so the last point I wanted to get to is, if you are an activist in any kind of social movement for change, I think it's really helpful to think out how it is the other person feels and how they are made to feel. What are the institutions on which they are growing to make them feel good about whatever they feel good about and bad about whatever they feel bad about? So if you are an environmental activist, which I hope you are, I would work through, first of all, through trust channels. Go to someone who for them is a credible communicator. If you come from Berkeley, California, to study them, you are not a credible communicator. You're presumed, but they're projecting onto you as if you have your own agenda. And even when you say, no, look, I'm just here to study you, we'll take you as a friend, but don't tell us about global warming. Okay. So what you do is you go to their church and you find someone in the church who actually is a scientist. Someone like Catherine Hayhoe in Texas is actually a scientist and said climate change is real. Her husband is an evangelical minister. She's the person to tell you. She'll say, look, I'm an evangelical believer too. But God has made the earth, and the earth is vulnerable. God's earth is vulnerable, and we're hurting her. So that person is believable to them. So you want to find people that are believable to them. Paradoxically, a lot of the CEOs of these big, huge international companies, if you look at their own description of their company, you see that they'll say, yes, climate change is real. Actually, we're not in denial at the very top level. Now, the lower managers will say, no, that's leftist talk. And you'll look at their portfolios, they're diversified. Well, wait a minute. If these companies that I'm working for aren't investing in oil, they're investing in windmills. Wait a minute, what's going on? So there are many ways that you can look at who they look to and help them rethink a story. So their trust channels. And if you're communicating directly and you have good way of relationships, you can point out that the company's profits have shot up. Just show them a piece of paper from the company's own website and say, yeah, but how come our school doesn't have proper desks? Yeah, so pointing out facts. Where do the owners live? They're not living next to the contamination. You are. They live in Greenwich, Connecticut. No, they live in California. They live somewhere away from the harm they're causing. And talking to Jackie, finally, I would speak to her pride in sacrifice and say, I know how much you love your children, what a sacrifice you as a mother would make for them. But why not protect them? Sacrifice yourself in the protection of them, because you know the company is hurting them. So as a woman, you are a carer, and we need to care. We often talk of Mother Earth. Well, Mother's sick. Mother's hurt. You need to take care of Mother. You are a caring person. You value care. Value this expression of care. That would be another way of talking to a Jackie. If you're talking to a Donnie, you say, I know what you mean. It's good to be brave, daring on the battlefront. It would be daring and brave to challenge the company, to not hurt you. And if you were talking to Janice, you say, I know you're loyal. That's a very point of great pride for you. Jesus was loyal to God, but not to others who claimed to be God. You're loyal to your community. And how about being loyal to it and helping keep it clean? In all three instances, what you're doing to be an effective activist is drawing up on their points of strength, what they are bringing from their childhood selves to their adult ego ideal, you could say. You're going with it, but you're redirecting that source of strength in them. So I guess I'd like to end here and say I wish you all the best of luck, both in understanding how it is loyalty is constructed and sacrifice is constructed and bravery are constructed, and use that deeper pathway into bringing around popular acceptance of important ideas. Thank you.
Muchísimas gracias, Arlie. Ha sido muy, muy interesante. Aunque nosotros ya habíamos leído el libro y conocemos tu trabajo, cuando mencionaste more now, we don't be afraid, tener más ahora y no tener miedo, se me hizo muy relevante porque son las feeling rule, la regla del sentir, opuestas a los activistas climáticos y ambientales. De hecho, las personas muy sensibles a la crisis climática y ambiental justamente están apostando por el menos, el futuro, y están reivindicando esa preocupación por las consecuencias de las crisis climática y ambiental. Y por eso mismo son estigmatizadas y estigmatizados. Entonces, creo que es muy interesante pensar en estas reglas, pensarla y contextualizarla en cada contexto cultural, porque tú trabajaste en Luisiana, pero aunque sea un estado de Estados Unidos, por ejemplo, tiene puntos en común con México. México también tiene una industria petroquímica importante, también tiene unas consecuencias de esta industria petroquímica, esa resignación frente al capitalismo que da de comer pero mata o enferma a la gente, está presente en la sociedad. Y entonces yo creo que este libro, que afortunadamente también está traducido al español, nos ayuda mucho a pensar también lo que pasa en México y en muchos otros países. En las zonas de sacrificios también de los países del norte global, donde hay más contaminación y más efectos, y en los países del sur global, donde casi todo el país puede ser una zona de sacrificio, menos las élites. ¿Sí? Y entonces, todas las reglas del sentir vinculadas con estar seguros, no estar preocupados, son muy importantes porque también nos permiten entender cómo luego son estigmatizados, burlados y aislados los activistas ambientales. Y muy importante, y muchas gracias por tu final sobre los consejos de cómo hablar con esas personas que pueden ser diferentes de nosotros, pero que tenemos que comunicar y comprender lo que sienten y piensan para poder construir alternativas. Y de hecho, y aquí concluyo, nosotros que trabajamos el activismo de base, de grassroots activism, vemos que muchas de estas estrategias de cruzar, ¿no?, los canales de comunicación se hace cotidianamente, ¿no? Trabajar en y con las comunidades, las personas que están en las colonias y barrios, justamente hacen lo que describes en el libro. Más difícil es cuando se lo plantea una organización internacional, pero el activismo de base sí lo hace y creo que también seguir leyendo tu trabajo y seguir, como hacemos nosotros, reflexionando a partir de tu trabajo, nos ayuda muchísimo en pensar, ¿no?, de desarrollar esas estrategias en distintos contextos. Entonces, creo que tu plática ha sido muy interesante, muy actual, muy útil también para un contexto como el mexicano, que, como decía, se parece mucho para muchas cosas a Luisiana. Y ahora doy la palabra a Tommaso porque creo que hay preguntas y a ver si concluimos con una pregunta.
Sí, muchas gracias, Arlie. Las conferencias están siendo seguidas por muchas personas. Estamos más de 150 entre Facebook y YouTube. Para resumir algunas de las preguntas de algunos estudiantes, quería preguntarte que claramente la regla de sentir, en tu caso de estudio, algunas siguen claramente la regla de sentir del capitalismo, como la admiración a la autoridad, el egocentrismo, etcétera, etcétera. Otras siguen, por ejemplo, la regla de sentir de la religión. Una de estas puede ser la compasión. Todas las religiones, ahí está la compasión a los más débiles. Bien, algunas de estas reglas como el individualismo, el egocentrismo y reglas de sentir como la compasión de la religión, estas personas, ¿cómo la conyugan? Porque algunas son en contraste entre ellas.
Let me see if I have understood this question. Is the question how do people reconcile a sense of compassion with the weak with devotion to the company? And how does one speak to that? Is that the question?
Sí.
Yeah.
Sí,
Well,
hay reglas de sentir contrastantes entre reglas de sentir del capitalismo y reglas de sentir religiosas. ¿Cómo la conyugan si hay supresión totalmente o otro tipo de trabajo, estrategia de trabajo emocional?
we have to understand first that the company is trying to, in a way, disguise the idea of profit. You know, you're not looking at the profit sheet and that workers getting very little and investors that the top people in the company are also loyal, also compassionate to their investors. They, have turned that in that direction. They feel very good about themselves. Look how we've helped all the lenders, we've given the money back, and we've been good to them. So that the value of loyalty and compassion can be turned in many directions, some for the good and some for the bad. And don't imagine that people that look to you like the bad guys don't feel good about themselves in some way. So understand how the pro-company people feel good about themselves and address that. Is it really helping the world if you have a cancer rate for 4-year-olds in this area of, 5% or something like that? Go with your own facts, but appeal to the idea of a person's goodness. Challenge what they are feeling good about. You can say, well, okay, I'm going on the wrong direction, but I guess if you're talking to a person who is loyal to their company and is disregarding of harm that this company is doing, you can say, look, I'm all for you earning a good wage. You deserve that. You work hard, but you deserve to work in a clean company. X has a clean company because they have regulations. Y has a clean company, they have regulations. Why couldn't your company be good in that way? Then you could be double good. So appeal to, don't criticize and ridicule their basis of pride. That's counterproductive. The left gets a terrible reputation by doing just that. What you want to do is, look, I know you want to be good. You want to give to your family. It's good that you want to give to your family, but how about giving health to your family and to your community? What about, and then stretch that goodness. Isn't it good to be good to the river? Does the river, one man in my study pointed to the Mississippi and he said, what do you see? I said, I see water. He said, no, you see Exxon's water. You see British Petroleum water. You see Sasol water. That isn't public water anymore. It's been stolen. It's been privatized. So if they are a person that believes in the publicness of a good public life, good playgrounds, good schools, you can appeal to the problem with privatizing things that should be public. Let me say one more thing on that. This is kind of weird. People have tried to call for the value of clean water by pretending it's like a company that has rights. Well, the water has a, if companies are seen to have a personality, which in the American political discourse, companies have been given, quote, personality. Well, why doesn't a river have a personality? Why doesn't it have its interests and its rights? It's a crazy way, in a way, you're trying to use their language to accomplish your goals, but somebody tried it. And I think everything's worth trying. It's an important thing we're talking about. Everything's worth trying.
Sí, y además, me uno a la respuesta a esta pregunta, porque yo creo que evidencia una vez más, y para concluir, la importancia de comprender lo que sienten las personas, todas, ¿no? Nuestros vecinos, los CEO de una empresa, todos los actores de la sociedad. Tenemos que comprender lo que sienten para luego poderlo desafiar. Entonces, el primer paso es comprenderlo, y una de las estrategias, como la autora explica y menciona en su último libro, es superar el muro de empatía que nos aleja de los que son diferentes de nosotros. Entonces, bueno, con las mismas palabras y conceptos de Arlie Hochschild, hay que superar el muro de empatía, comprender los demás, no juzgarlo, no criticarlos o ridiculizarlos gratuitamente, sino más bien comprenderlos, y desde ahí, a partir de esa comprensión, desafiar las reglas del sentir, que son las que sostienen ese sistema. Porque finalmente, creo que aquí estamos todos de acuerdo, tenemos que buscar alternativas a esta crisis climática, socioambiental, también de desigualdad, de injusticia, y un camino es también comprender lo que sentimos los seres humanos en este sentido, cómo se construyen las emociones que sentimos, ¿no? Cuáles son las instituciones, como decía Hochschild, que nos ayudan, que influyen en la construcción de esas emociones, y desde ahí empezar a trabajar para crear otra cultura emocional alternativa que nos ayudará a construir el futuro que queremos, ¿no? Un futuro en armonía con la naturaleza, un futuro donde haya menos desigualdad y menos injusticias. Espero que Arlie esté de acuerdo con este final. Si quieres decir algo, Arlie, para concluir. Si no, de nuestra parte es todo, y te agradecemos muchísimo tus palabras.
Thank you so much, Alice and Tommaso, for organizing this. I think it's tremendously important. It goes to the deepest issue, I think, that faces us, in fact, on this planet. Climate change and contamination are huge issues. They are international issues. There's a powerful force at work today to resist changing for the protection of the earth. And we're already seeing the earth is in crisis. So it's a good time for us to expand a movement to alter this misuse of the earth. And the best way of doing it is the one we're talking about right now, to appeal to people's goodness, but to figure out where it is that they feel good and expand it, challenge it, widen it. And I think that's the most effective way. If you look at the best leaders in the country, in the world, I think of Nelson Mandela, for example. He didn't say, oh, you're bad, you're terrible, only I am right. No. He understood what the racial issues were. and was large enough to build 1,000 empathy bridges to people who would otherwise be enemies. And in a country that was going to slaughter itself, he stopped it. He stopped it in this way. We have much to learn from our best leaders. I think they were empathy bridge builders, changers of true empathy. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's lovely to meet you and good luck.
Muchas gracias, Arlie. Muchas gracias al CEICH,
Thank
a
you.
Paola para la traducción, ¿no? Recuerdo simplemente que tenemos una última sesión de este año, el 17 de noviembre, con otro investigador de la UC, de la Universidad de California, en este caso Santa Cruz, Deborah Gould. Otra investigadora que trabajó Emociones y el activismo, también trabajo en el manejo emocional, y nos dará una conferencia sobre sus nuevas investigaciones que se llama Emociones y alianzas inesperadas en el activismo de base. En particular, nos habla de la alianza improbable entre una red de colectivos de bases queer con colectivos católicos de base para la lucha para el derecho a la vivienda. Por lo tanto, será un aspecto muy interesante que va a tratar sobre las alianzas y las emociones. Agradezco a todos y nos vemos el 17 de noviembre a las 12. Adiós.